This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Institute. Learn more at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Institute. Build his future.
Joining us now, actually from vacation, somewhere in upstate New York, battling the Bears, is Democratic delegate from the Fairfax area, the 44th District of Virginia, Scott Surovell. Delegate, great to have you right here on the John Fredericks Show. How's your vacation?
Going great so far, John. It's great to be here again.
All right, always a pleasure to have you on. Now, we were excited to get you on, Delegate, because you're not one to be shy. I know that. And you've made one of the strongest calls for Governor Bob McDonnell to resign over the gift scandal, and suggesting over the weekend that if the governor does not vacate the mansion, that he should be forced out by the end of the week. That's pretty stern there, Scott.
Yeah, John, well, first of all, I can tell you I'm disappointed that more members of the legislature haven't come out and spoken out about or to condemn the lack of disclosure, not just the lack of disclosure, but just given the pure size of the lack of disclosures, it's really amazing. And I just can't believe there's only three of us that see it fit to say something about it. The Constitution of Virginia gives the legislature the authority to look into this stuff and to do something about it, not the federal government. And I just don't understand why more people aren't speaking out and saying something about this, number one. But in terms of, where the governor is, Senator Peterson asked the governor to explain himself publicly three weeks ago, I think now.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And the governor hasn't said anything. And, I don't know why he feels compelled not to speak, but it's starting to seem like he doesn't have anything to say about it. And, given that's the case, I think it's what he has to say probably isn't good, and he needs to move on and focus on his own personal problems on his own time, and let somebody else focus on doing the business of state government. I mean, he's the CEO of a 100,000 person employee force, and he's got a lot to do. He's got a budget to write, he's got appointments to make, and I feel like things are getting delayed and not done because this is becoming a huge distraction for him.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that this is a distraction now. I figure it's not, commenting. There is a federal investigation. He's lawyered up, so I'm sure he's been advised not to speak out on this issue. As you're an attorney, you would advise your own clients, right?
If I had a client who's being investigated by the FBI and him and his family, if I had a client whose family was being investigated by the FBI, I would want to control their communication with the public.
Right. So
Absolutely.
he's doing exactly what his lawyers are telling him, and if you were his lawyer, Delegate Surovell, you'd be telling him the same thing. Here's the rub, and let me give you a question here that I need answered, because calling for him to resign, you say there's only three of you. That's yourself, Senator Chap Peterson, and Senator Fredericks. But the reality is, right now, from what I've seen, even though a lot of the actions and the money taken, watches, dresses, shopping sprees, food going out, checks, 50,000, 70,000. I mean, it's indefensible morally, I think. But according to the Virginia gift statutes, which is kind of the Wild West, I mean, it's not illegal, right? So why should he resign?
Well, I think there's a misconception there about that, John. And, let me tell you a couple of responses to that. First of all, many of us accept gifts. Let's give you an example. Last year I was given 6 tickets to King's Dominion and 6 tickets to Busch Gardens.
Right.
I took my wife and kids. I have 4 children. When I did my gift disclosure, I think the tickets were like $35 a piece or something. Mm-hmm. I listed all 6 tickets on my disclosure. I didn't pretend like 4 of the tickets were to my kids and 1 was to my wife, and the one to me was under $50, so I didn't have to tell anybody about any of it. I put all 6. I think the intent there is to cover gifts that you and your family received because of your position in state government. Now, if you want to read it very carefully about what you have to disclose, what you do not have to disclose, if you read it word for word, strict construction, as we call it in the legal world, I think there's a way to read it that your family doesn't, that you don't have to disclose gifts to your family, but that's not the spirit of the law. Number one. Number two, the Constitution of Virginia is what governs our conduct first and foremost. And the Constitution of Virginia gives the state legislature the discretion to remove somebody from office for four things: high crimes and misdemeanors, which is typically interpreted as meaning felonies and misdemeanors, as determined by the state Senate. And thirdly, corruption. And lastly, political malfeasance. And that's in the Constitution. It's not in the Code. And since our Constitution was adopted in 1776, that's the standard that's been in there. And I think that has some bearing on this situation in terms of how we ought to look at his conduct.
Okay, I see where you're going with that, but I'm going to get back again. If you take the tickets that you got to King's Dominion and to Busch Gardens, right? You made the choice to disclose them, and we commend you on that, no question. But under the law, as it's written, you didn't have to disclose any of it because the tickets for yourself were under $50, and you don't have to disclose under the law those that are given to your family members. Although it's squirrely and it's got to be changed. I think there's no one that could come on our show and argue that the gift-giving law in Virginia makes any sense at all, especially in view of how McDonnell has, what did you call it, strict construct? The way he's maneuvered about it. I mean, look, there's no question that the McDonnells, they looked at the law, they had advisors, and they threaded the needle on it. There's no question. And so his public opinion is down, and now he's in big trouble. But my question goes back to, did he break the law or not? So my question, that's the question that I'm trying to find if it can be answered.
Well, John, let me go at this a different way. Okay. First of all, there's multiple transactions involved in this whole mess. Okay. One of the other transactions that has become problematic, it was pointed out by Julian Walker in the Virginian Pilot, which was in April of 2011. The governor was given a flight on a private jet to the Final Four, worth $22,000. My understanding from the report on that was that the only people on that flight were the governor, his wife, and his two daughters. And for some reason, that flight got disclosed as an in-kind contribution to his PAC, when in fact that's a gift.
Yes.
If he's not taking fundraisers, if it's not a political fundraiser, that's not a contribution. That's a gift. Okay? Now, if you want to get into what the FBI is looking at, which I think could fall under the high crimes and misdemeanors or the malfeasance or corruption standards as well, the governor took $86,000. He disclosed $86,000 of in-kind contributions through right around until after his election, through July of 2010. Shortly after that, he took this Final Four flight, which got miscategorized in 2011.
Right.
And then all this other stuff started: the shopping spree, the $50,000 check for the properties, the wedding caking. Then all of a sudden, Maureen becomes an Anablock spokesman, and he starts seeing more and more undisclosed gifts coupled with these Anablock meetings, where all of a sudden now Johnny Williams has become one of their best friends. And I think when the legislature sees stuff like that, whether it's a legislator or a statewide office holder or a Supreme Court justice or whatever, we have a duty to speak out under our Constitution, regardless of whether the FBI is looking at it or not. And I think to stand behind some federal grand jury and sort of delegate our ethical responsibilities to them is inappropriate. We take an oath to uphold our Constitution. And when they drafted our Constitution in 1776, the federal government didn't exist. We don't outsource our ethical policing to them.
Look, I think that's a legitimate argument, Delegate Surovell. Look, there's no question the way the governor has spun the trip to the Final Four, by the way, which was first broke by Julian Walker in the Virginian Pilot. I want to give him a shout out for that. was that, well, he went down there, he did a fundraiser. So you kind of think, okay, the fundraiser got thrown together, therefore he put it to his PAC, but the airline flight was $22,000. And, you know, when people look at that, here's one of the problems. Why don't you just get on a Southwest flight for $90 a piece, right? I mean, people are struggling to make ends meet today. There's, you know, 7% or 8% nationally unemployed. People are underemployed. You know, they're struggling to buy gasoline to get to Busch Gardens for a day. It's like, you know, you want to go to the Final Four. You want to represent your state with VCU in there. You know, buy an AirTran ticket for $95. I mean, this is, I think, one of the bigger problems the governor has is, you know, the average person out there, they're not getting Rolex watches. The other thing is this idea that Johnny Williams was a longtime friend of his. Look, the first time he met Johnny Williams was Johnny Williams gave him a check when he was running for attorney general. So their relationship from the start, Delegate, was based on money changing hands. So I think the idea that, well, you know, this is a longtime friend of the family that's helping us out, I don't think that flies. How about you?
No, I don't think it does either, John. But it all, I couldn't agree with you more. If it were me, I'd probably get in my car to drive to the Final Four instead of taking a plane. But I think the disclosure part of this is, for purposes of our Constitution, is probably the lesser sin. It's the entire episode, the lack of disclosure coupled with the hawking anti-block, and the timing of all of it is what really, and the volume of it is what really raises a lot of concerns from my point of view about his ability to govern.
Right, but in the governor's defense, Delegate Surovell, I mean, they're saying, and this is pretty clear, you know, there were no favors given to this company, this anti-block Johnny Williams company. There were no favors. There was no quid pro quo. There was no Phil Hamilton, I'll get you this, you give me that. None of that can be found. So, you know, they're taking the position that, look, it's a Virginia company. We promoted the company. If the company does well, they pay taxes and provide jobs, and we do that all the time. But there was no favorable law. There was no tax incentive. There was nothing they did other than say, hey, you know, it's good to have a company expanding in the state of Virginia. Why don't you buy their product? Again, that's within the law. So my question gets back to, why should the governor resign if he's not broken a law?
I don't know, John. Maybe to me it's just all in the eye of the beholder. But I mean, I think when you look at how the disclosures changed, and then how the McDonnell's behavior relative to those disclosures changed, there's a pretty strong circumstantial case that the idea that there was no quid pro quo for this starts to look very sketchy. And simply because it hasn't been disclosed yet, or we haven't seen the emails yet, or we haven't seen the phone call logs or whatever, does not mean that the evidence is not there. I mean, as I said earlier, you know, the Final Four trip happened in April of 2011. The shopping spree was spring of 2011. The first $50,000 check was May of 2011. The catering check was June of 2011. And then 3 days later, Maureen's hawking anti-block. Right? And then you got August 2011. They go to Smith Mountain Lake, take the Ferrari ride. August, the Rolex shows up. And then there's another anti-block luncheon. And then you got two $70,000 loans, anti-block conferences, and gift bags start flying around. I mean, I can connect dots. And to say that this is normal for a first lady to be running around hawking dietary supplements for a large donor who they didn't know until the election, and who started giving them pretty significant gifts, you know, it raises a lot of questions in my mind, and that's why I think that, you know, the House of Delegates, if the governor's not willing to step down, the House of Delegates ought to look into it, and the Senate can hear the evidence and make their mind up. And, you know, and John, I just want to say one other thing. You know, I mean, I don't know. I never served with the governor in the legislature, but I know a lot of people obviously who did, and I know some other people who've known him for a long time, and all of them tell me that they just view this as being completely out of character for him, and they're just sort of shocked and dumbfounded by it. And, you know, my interactions with the governor have always been that I find him to be a very sort of sincere and honest guy, and I find these transactions just to be shocking. You know, he grew up near where I did. We both share reverence for George Washington. I a love of my part of Fairfax County. You know, all of this, it's really saddening in a lot of ways. And but just, it's shocking. I mean, the amount of money involved that wasn't disclosed is just shocking.
I mean, it's shocking. Look, you can't defend it on any moral grounds whatsoever and be credible. The piggish opulence that went on with the New York shopping spree and the watch and the $22,000 private jet plane ride. I mean, it's just, and it is so out of character. I think, you know, Delegate, those of us that know the governor personally, like me, this is why this is so gut-wrenching, because it is so out of character for Bob McDonnell. I mean, he's a man of, he's not a man of great wealth. You know, he's an average guy. He's raised a family. He's got, 5 children. And, he's not been, financially, over the top. I mean, he's been a middle-class guy. And for those that know him, I mean, this is just, it's just hard to believe, those that are friends of his, want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think almost everybody that I've had on my show that has served with him in the House or in Virginia Beach has said the same thing, that they just find this to be so out of character. I think that's one of the issues that we're dealing with. Hey, I got to sum it up, Delegate Surovell, but it seems like what you're saying is that regardless of whether or not the McDonald's were able to, so far, thread the needle on the law, what you're saying is that it's time for them, based on everything that's come out right now, to just step down. And the only way to get him out of office is that he either voluntarily steps down or there's a special session. He's not going to call it. That could only be called by Speaker Howe, right? That's it.
No, actually, 2/3 of members of both bodies would have to petition the governor for it, and then the governor's required to call it under our Constitution. That's the only other way you can get a special.
Okay, so in order to do that, you're going to have a majority of Republicans on two sides. So right now...
majority on the House, we need about 7 on the Senate, I guess.
Right, you need 7 Republicans on the Senate and a majority in the House. So right now, Bob McDonnell has said he is not going to resign. So are you unequivocally calling for your colleagues to convene a special session?
Well, what I wrote in my article was that, we'll come to the end of the week, we'll see what happens. I mean, I've been talking to some people about it, and only 3 of us have spoken out so far, and I can't. It's really dumbfounding to me that more people don't want to express their opinion about it. And I'm going to continue to talk to people. My law partner, Senator Peterson, he wrote up a piece yesterday where he basically suggested we need to look into impeachment. And so I know that he's supportive, but right now I'm focusing on my vacation.
Well, Scott, we appreciate your taking time from your vacation to be with us. Democratic Delegate Scott Surovell from District 44. That's Fairfax. Great to have you with us, and we appreciate your unabashed candor. Thank you, sir.
Yes, no problem. Thanks for having me again, John.